Let me just introduce myself. I am Mohammed Jameel. I am the editor-in-chief of NewsHamster, which is a digital news portal and the strategic partner for today's webinar slash the digital event that we are hosting. Before we move forward, I would hand over to Mr. Subramanya, who is going to explain to us or perhaps highlight about what is the People's for, or you could say, Politics for a Change movement that we are all part of. And we are, we have a lot of things in store and in plan for the time to come. I'm handing it over to Mr. Subramanya.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes.
Good evening. Is it, should I be speaking in English or Kannada, or those are the languages which I'm comfortable with?
English would be perfect, sir.
English should be perfect. See, this is a group called Politics for a Change. As of now, we have around 530 members. And this group was basically created for the educated class and the people who are opinion makers to speak out about the politics which is happening in the country. What we generally do is, we speak amongst our own selves, and, we take some emojis and paste it on Twitter or Facebook or something, and there ends the matter. So this group is now created basically for the people to understand and come out with their opinions. These opinions can be made into policies tomorrow. Today's subject is Know Your Leaders. Know Your Leaders. And today we are talking about BJP Manifesto of 2024. The elections are over. We are trying to analyze the BJP Manifesto. I'll quickly introduce the speakers today. Probably Saqlain will later speak about themselves. Surabhi is a spokesperson of BJP Karnataka, a name to be remembered for a very, very long time. And Mr. Mohammed Amaan Asim. Am I correct, sir?
Amaan Asim, yes.
Mohammed Asim, National Chairperson, Research Department, NSUI and Congress. And Shri Ravindra Reshme, independent journalist and a political analyst. We need a lot of time to speak about Mr. Ram, very, very well-known, experienced journalist of the state. And he comes with at least 4 decades of political experience. Sir, ಸರಿಯಾಗಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ನ ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ನ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ನ?
Am I visible?
ರೇಷ್ಮೆ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಸರ್, ಬಹಳ ಖುಷಿ ಆಯ್ತು.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಸುಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣ್ಯ, ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
ಬಹಳ ಖುಷಿ ಆಯ್ತು ನೀವು ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದಿರೋದು. ಫುಲ್ ಸ್ಮಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಬೇರೆ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಇವತ್ತು.
No, I'm squeezed between two youngsters, perhaps.
I'm very confident and hopeful that both of them, all the three of you will give an insight about today's topic. Today is National Press Day. We wish all the journalists National Press Day. This group is basically to encourage critical thinking and help citizens become informed voters. And we will be discussing about issues which will shape our country in the future. This is about the basic introduction. I think Saqlain should take forward from here.
Right, sir. All right. Thank you, Mr. Subramanya, for those formal words. Well, before we proceed, I just want to highlight the fact that today is the National Press Day, and there is sort of a responsibility on us as journalists and media portals to, hold up a mirror to the society and question what's happening around us and, ask the right kind of things. So when you talk about mirrors, when you talk about asking questions, we have the manifesto that the political parties across the country, they put forward before coming to the elections. Well, today we might have a lot of disagreements based on what kind of politics is at play. Is it roti kapda or makan, or is it something else? Keeping that aside, I would just want to understand, I just want to put forward that we will have 3 distinct individuals talk about the manifesto of the current ruling dispensation, and they will present their opinions, and we'll have 7 minutes each of the speakers for them to talk about their thoughts and their opinions about it. And then we'll open for Q&A, and the audience can ask questions to each of the speakers. I'll be moderating it here, so I would just say that we are looking forward for you guys to put out your thoughts, and we look forward to understanding something new that's not been spoken about, that's not out there. So I would say that we will start with Ms. Surabhi, because she is from the party, and she'll be able to put forward the aspects in the first hand point of view. And then we'll follow up with Aman, and then Ravindra sir will give us a holistic perspective, both from the point of view of the academia / governance, and also from the point of view of the media and the common folks. So I hope you guys are okay with that, and I would just hand over to Mr. Surabhi.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Super grateful for this gathering today on a Saturday afternoon. Thank you for spending the time to talk about something that probably is incredibly important, but also incredibly important to discuss with diverse and varied perspectives. Grateful to the organizers for having invited me here. I will take my 7 minutes. They've given me a fantastic structure already, but I'll play around with it just a little bit. I wanted to first and foremost establish why is it that parties have manifestos or these documents to guide their voters for voting, as well as guide their policy making when they are in government. It's an incredibly important exercise that we've seen happen across the country and varied countries as well. For us in the BJP, we think of it less as here's a list of things that we're going to do, but here are a set of values and goals that we hope to achieve, which is why our manifesto is titled as a Sankalpa Patra. Many of you all would be familiar with the term Sankalpa, loosely translates to resolution in Sanskrit. And it is in some ways, we are entering year end. We create a resolution for ourselves also when the calendar year is just about to begin. Similarly, here's a set of things that we hope to achieve. Here are a set of things that we hope to change or bring into the country. But here are also the set of things that we've heard from what the country wants. And I stress on that second part because you would all have heard this term elsewhere. The BJP is a very Karyakarta driven party. It is a party that goes from bottom up to a great extent. We have inbuilt processes for our Sankalpa Patra, which have been going on for many elections, where we have suggestion boxes, we have different vehicles that allow for suggestions to be collected, including a digital vehicle through which we got close to 15 lakh suggestions, as well as the Namo app. I think the Namo app combined gave us 15 lakh suggestions, another 1 lakh from different web sources. So this collaborative exercise of coming up with a resolution that will further on determine what our policies will be built on, that is what this Sankalpa or this resolution starts with. I think I personally really like the term Sankalpa because in some ways it is setting your mind to do X, Y, Z. From a party perspective, it's super proud to this is a thing that I feel super proud about talking, which is that often parties end up putting things on their manifesto, and because there is no accountability mechanism or a measurable mechanism through which there is a performance review, for example, on how have the parties really adhered to the manifesto or not. Within the BJP, we've had very high standards for our Sankalpa Patra. And this becomes a complaint for some of the people in the opposition, but I take it as a matter of pride that many of the policies that have been implemented, many of the laws that have come into place, whether be it Article 370, whether it was CAA, especially civilizational work, has found clear resonance in successive BJP manifesto. Having said that, I reminded myself to make this as a point. Today, I'm super celebratory that one aspect of the manifesto that had found its place both in 2009, 2014, 2019 has finally gotten off the list, and that is the Women's Reservation Bill. The Women's Reservation Bill has been in successive BJP manifestos for years. It has been a commitment that we have made. It's been in other party manifestos as well. But the passing of the bill in the previous term finally had ensured that was taken off the list. Similarly, like I said, many civilizational big ticket sort of reforms, the 2014 manifesto, 2019 manifesto, each of them had a lot of agriculture-oriented reforms that were promised as well. All these things are, what do they finally do? They set a larger agenda on what needs to be done. Having said that, coming to the 2024 manifesto, one thing that drives the one word that could summarize the manifesto or the Sankalp Patra a lot more is actually continuity. This is the third term of the Prime Minister, and this is the third time that we were going into the election with his leadership. So a great amount of the different policies that were set forth, there was a continuity to show that one, things have worked, and two, that here's what we plan to do with what has worked the best. Whether it was Ayushman Bharat, which has been extended for senior citizens above 70, or increasing Mudra, ensuring that there are better policies within the Mudra scheme. They are tackling issues such as youth employment, ensuring that women become a bigger part of the economy. These were aspects that were worked in continuity. And I'd like for all of you to see that, to me, this is a big difference, because I don't look at the 2024 manifesto in silos. I look at the 2014 manifesto, the promises made thereon, what was delivered within that 5 years, the 2019 manifesto, what was delivered thereon, what lessons were learned also, incredibly important, and how that kind of shaped the 2024 manifesto. The one thing that was very apparent was the differentiation of the, and this is a political aspect, right? Because political conversations were going towards the caste census, towards socioeconomic surveys. The Prime Minister spoke in his very characteristic way that the caste that we want to be empowering, and it's a very beautiful way in which he said, which is Yuva, Annadata, Mahila, and Garib. Now, I'm not saying at any point in time that we should think of only these, but these were the drivers that our manifesto was built on, because these were the drivers that we hoped would take our economy as well as society towards the 2047 mark. So each of these sectors were, and you will see this in different manifestos, not just the BJP, but elsewhere also, that some sort of categorization to bring it together. And I really enjoyed this categorization, and we can discuss that also a lot more when we go forward. Big themes: economic growth, of course, top 3 global economies was always something that has been spoken about repeatedly. Having more modernization in terms of infrastructure, especially in our cities, that was another focus. Sustainability, climate change found its place in manifestos across parties in 2019. That continuation in terms of sustainable growth was also again presented. Using technology for agriculture, the agri stack or the agri digital infrastructure, that was, I think, a big promise that has been made and has been also, to a great extent, the work has begun on that front. The digital agriculture mission. These were some big things that I felt were the strengths that the organizers today asked me to speak about. The other part that you will see in our manifesto is that we have looked at it also as a performance review. You will see how schemes have performed, presentation of new schemes, some of which have already been announced.
Fibers.
So the Vidya Lakshmi scheme that was recently announced, providing loans collateral for ensuring 22 lakh students get annual sort of support. Then the Har Ghar Jal mission, the Suryodaya mission, the one that has solar rooftops. Each of these, I think, were new schemes that were also presented, sometimes in new packaging as well, but with new incentives. And one of my favorite schemes was the Lakpati Didi scheme, which is, I think, the shift from women empowerment to women-led development has been very successfully sort of put together in the 2024 Sankalp Patra. I'm happy to speak a little bit more on the specifics, but I just wanted to also just take a step back and give an overall perspective and view. One of the things that I have a constant problem with, and I hope my co-panelists and I can discuss this, is when we take a political party, their policies, and say that it is static to a great extent. In the world of discussion, we have right-wing parties, left-wing parties, centrist parties. fundamentally, I am against that categorization. One, because it has always been a Eurocentric categorization. In India, all your parties shift towards the left. In what perspective? From the perspective of welfareism, from the perspective of ensuring that your class that requires state support is given that state support. Every government has had to do that from different ways and different perspectives. While the Congress and its ecosystem think of it as rights-based welfareism, I think here it's a lot more productivity-oriented spending. That's how I would see the differentiation, and I don't like to bracket different parties as left, right, center. Yes, on particular views, we have our own, left, right, and center, but the global understanding of it, I don't know if it applies as significantly as it does to India. Why I say this is because a Sankalp Patra is also a very dynamic, living sort of entity. What it reflects today is, one, the aspirations of the people who are on, who have given their ideas for the Sankalp Patra, but also a dynamic, changing society that is also constantly thinking and rethinking where they see the nation. So it's a beautiful exercise for us, at least in the Bharatiya Janata Party, where we sit and think through. I, as a Karyakarta, as well as all my, in my world, everybody that there is, we take this moment to sort of think about what is it, where do we see the country going in the next couple of years? So in some ways, a vision document for the country, and that's how we view it. So one of the successes that we have spoken about is 25 crore people coming out of extreme poverty. That did not happen overnight, right? It was thought processes like this. It was many of the schemes that in our era that we were able to bring through and ensure that it leads to productive sort of gains for each of these people. That is what has led us here. And I think therefore it's incredibly important to have a clear roadmap. If there was anything that, I'm not sure if this is the forum for it, but what I find as a strength for the BJP manifesto in the last 3 terms has also deeply ties to the leadership, which is a lot of what was done in Gujarat, the push in terms of investments, in terms of building productive capital, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of taking issues, long-standing issues head on. Whether it was creating a bankruptcy code, whether it was handling the NPA crisis. I think the approach to it has also greatly depended on the leadership of our Prime Minister to do things in a mission mode, to do things with a lot more public participation. I've heard this often from the Congress that none of the schemes, for example, building of toilets through Swachh Bharat or building houses through Awas, none of these were new. I do agree. Yes, they were not new, but there was a new component to it. What was that new component? When you make Swachh Bharat a behavioral change, build it on a foundation of behavioral change, I think the potential for success also increases. I'm happy to go into the numbers, but for me, from a policy perspective, that was what was important. So what our Sankalp Patra, what our approach to policy, what our intent has always been is to find solutions that work, feasible solutions that work. Fiscal prudence, fiscal discipline, these are things that have been very important to the BJP. And I think in the larger goal of reaching that top 3 economy while taking as many people as possible along, that has been an incredibly important part, which is that we will do it in a fiscally prudent way. So yeah, this is my first sort of understanding that I wanted to share with you about the BJP manifesto. I'm really glad to be a part of these conversations because we all live in silos. We all talk in silos, at least the political actors here. We don't discuss enough. We don't put our party ideas aside and discuss and talk more. So it's really nice to be able to have these sort of neutral platforms where one can think a little bit more about collaboration versus competition. And of course, happy to hear all your perspectives. People who have willingly come and want to discuss this, whether it's 4 people, 5 people, 20 people, it makes me incredibly happy. Happy to continue the conversation and answer your questions. Thank you.
Well, Surabhi, that was really insightful and a lot of things you spoke about. Well, I like the fact that you particularly mentioned about the continuity aspect, and of course highlighted some peaks of the Modi government. Of course, there have been fantastic peaks that we have come across. I mean, for me particularly, when I look at the past few years of the Modi regime, I see that the Northeast, the development that has happened in Northeast, the kind of connectivity that has come for this piece of land that was connected with a very small chicken's neck called the Siliguri corridor to the mainland India. I feel that's something that is something to be appreciated. And of course, Ayushman Bharat and these kind of schemes that have come about. I really think that these have to be spoken about well and taken forward in a better way for the common people to understand. Well, I have one reservation about the categorization of political parties that you said between right, left, and center. Well, I agree that there have been distinctions in the past, but as of today, I think that's the only way people, be it the millennials or the Gen Zs, are looking at the political parties out there, or just to make it convenient for themselves. Anyway, we will continue the discussion on this. I will pass it on to Amaan Asim from the Congress. Amaan, I hope that this will be rather wholesome conversation for us to hear and understand about your take from the Congress point of view on the Sankalp Patra. Over to you, Amaan.
Thank you, Saqlain. I hope you all can hear me loud and clear. Thank you so much for having me here. I echo Surabhi in saying that I'm very glad to see that we're having an informed conversation on politics and people willingly come out to actually discuss politics. So thank you to the organizers and thank you to NewsHamster for coming together and making this platform available, because I think in 9 p.m. debates, it becomes more of a shouting match than actually discussing politics or even policy for that matter. So it's important that we actually have this conversation without that element of us just being at each other's heads all the time and actually be able to discuss things outright. And I think for me, let me first start off with like how Surabhi did in terms of what the manifestos actually mean. And let me share a story that I actually heard from somebody when it was the UPA government, and we are happy to acknowledge that we were in a coalition government, unlike others would like to. But the UPA government in 2004, when it was formed, there was a proposal that came up to come up with a set of urban infrastructure that could help the problems that cities were facing back then in India. And they said that we need to come up with urban infrastructure that includes buses that can be provided to city councils. So if you go around Bangalore today, you will see these JNURM buses that are still plying in many parts of the country, including in Bangalore. So the name for that was the Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission. So the funny story that goes with that is that considering it was a coalition government, they had to put together the different manifestos that came from different parties and find the common minimum agenda that could be there for the government that was coming up. And at that point, somebody realized that there was a line in the Communist Party's manifesto that mentioned that we should have urban renewal. So in order to push together what the Congress wanted, which was to push an urban mission, which would include buses and include urban infrastructure, and to pull something that was just a word in the Communist Party's manifesto, together brought us to a policy that today leads to millions of people using buses. That are well, it was a central government sponsored scheme that led to states getting funding for procuring many buses that led to a shift to environmental friendly forms of transportation. So to talk about how a manifesto, word in the manifesto, a phrase in the manifesto has far-reaching impacts. And I am extremely happy to hear from Surabhi in terms of how consultative the process was with the BJP manifesto. And I think that is something that is essential to a manifesto process. For the Congress party, if you go back to 2019, the research department, which I used to be closely associated with, had more than 100 consultations from across the country over a period of more than 6 months in building 2019 manifesto. And I think the 2019 manifesto of the Congress, as well as the 2024 manifesto of the Congress, speaks volumes to the detail at which we've gone. So much so that many of the policies also led to being copied by the BJP. And I think emulation is the best form of flattery that we have. So it's wonderful to see that even thought out processes are not restricted into what politics and policies are restricted to by parties. Instead, it goes beyond that. And I think that's what's important. And the 2019 manifesto came through hundreds of consultations that happened. The 2024 manifesto, in fact, is a more than 2-year process. Look at it from the Bharat Jodo Yatras, 2 of them that happened across the country. It was a face-to-face conversation with the highest decision-making people of the party. You had a former president of the party, you had a senior member of the party walking across the length and breadth of the country and actually speaking to people. And if you want to have a sneak peek of understanding how a manifesto consultation happens, you should just look at the videos on the Congress YouTube website of how Rahul Gandhi interacts with people and understands their pulse and understands exactly what they think they need. And that's what has come up in the 2024 manifesto for the Congress. But that's all I can say for the Congress for now. Let's move on to what we're discussing with the BJP. So I think my fellow panelists actually stole my idea of where I was looking at setting this debate, which is to look at the forecasts. So, but actually, let me make a small point on the name itself. So, while it is called the Sankalp Patra, it is also called Modi Ki Guarantee. Back when the Congress party was busy telling everybody that we will come up with 5 guarantees, whether it was in Karnataka, it was guarantees across the country. It was the BJP that said that now we will show you what is a Modi Ki Guarantee. So there again, very lack of innovation, I would say, if not anything else, but just appropriation of names in the end of the day. And Modi Ki Guarantee is what we had said that time is a guarantee which doesn't have a warranty. It came with 10 years of performance, but 5 years of another set of 5 failures that we're going to be seeing. And back then, it was called the Reverie culture to be giving out guarantees, but that Reverie has now been translated for them into Ladki Behen in Bahan in Maharashtra, similar schemes in Madhya Pradesh, which they were claiming were bad cases for us, but now their prime methods of welfareism as well. But coming to what Surabhi was saying about the manifesto itself, let's discuss them in terms of what Modi ji said in terms of forecasts. Let's look at it in terms of the youth, the poor, the farmers, and women. And let's look at where the manifesto stands with all of these things. So coming to the youth, the first promise that was made was about jobs. The manifesto says that there will be unprecedented investment in infrastructure with creating a large number of employment opportunities. We will continue this investment for employment growth. This sounds like a manifesto that even I would agree with. But in the end of the day, when you look at the devil is in the details in the end of the day. Instead of giving us a number like they have previously over the years, they have instead used a number saying the large number of employment opportunities. But let me remind everybody of what the promises were. The promises were 2 crore jobs every year. In 2019, that was revised to 1 crore jobs per year. But what is the reality? And I think my fellow panelists spoke about a performance review. So this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm giving a performance review of where we stand. And instead where we stand with unemployment today is that it is at a 45% high, which was at the unemployment rate for India's youth population in 22-23 was at 45%. We had at one point in the Modi government in 2023 a higher unemployment rate than Bangladesh and Pakistan as well. That is the state of which unemployment is in this country and at which we are currently dealing with. So when we talk about investment leading to employment, we don't see that really happening. The youth have been failed when it comes to jobs. Second, it promised a paper leak law. And it's very odd to see that the government came up with the paper leak law in its manifesto when it had already implemented the paper leak law in February itself. And the paper leak law had clearly failed because even after inclusion of it in its as a law and as a manifesto promise later on, it continued to fail because students, and I come from the NSUI, which represents millions and millions of students, and I have spoken to so many of them whose dreams have been crushed because this government has failed to ensure paper leaks have been curtailed. Instead, their government has been involved at different levels, including allegations against the education minister himself of being involved with paper leaks. And we'd love to see a resolution to this, but that is another promise where the manifesto promised something for the youth and also implemented it already, but failed considerably. Next, it spoke about an apprenticeship act. Again, this was something that the Congress party had included, and this is something that, if going by the format we were looking at, is a good point. Yes, we should have an apprenticeship act because of the lack of jobs that we have for the youth. We should have an opportunity for youth to actually be able to intern at companies and get some experience. But instead of the right to apprenticeship that the Congress had proposed, the BJP came up with something called the Apprenticeship Act. And in the budget of which was presented earlier this year in February, in May and June, post the election, you had the government set out that it would actually be aiming at top 500 companies and giving them a target of providing 1 crore internships in 5 years. That would be a startling, if you divide it by the 500 companies that exist, that's 20,000 interns per company for 5 years. So that was extremely interesting to see them talk about how, we would be providing apprenticeships to everybody, but actually, do you think a company can hold 4,000 interns per year? Quickly, let me just go over farmers and the poor. So when you come to the poor, I think inflation is something that's really affecting everybody today, whether it's the poor, the middle class, and an average common person in India. It's affecting our pockets. And just for an example of that, there's been a 20% reduction in crude oil prices across the world, but the government has failed to pass on that 20% pass to us. Instead, the manifesto, in fact, doesn't mention inflation anywhere. It just speaks about rising food. It just speaks about food prices being curtailed. let me skip over farmers and I can discuss that later, but let me just give an overarching theme that we have to look at. We can look at all of the Sankalp Patra as something that is great and something that has actually set out a very good vision for this country. And if it was, and I would concede that it would be a great vision for this country on multiple counts of the economy and of society and how we're going forward. But the only point is when it comes to performance review and when it comes to execution, you can have, in the Prime Minister's own words, you can have a Sardar at the helm, but you have to be a Sardar. You have to be effective in the end of the day. So it's about how do you make effectiveness out of your policies? How do you bring them to action? And how do you not set lofty promises and values and goals that are not achievable? And why sell those promises in the end of the day and convince people on the promises that don't actually matter? And finally, when you talk about the third largest economy, we are still a third largest economy that would have gotten there irrespective of whoever was at the helm. It's the same way how the government took credit for G20 presidentship as if it was something that only came because Modi ji was prime minister. It was in fact only a matter of time that India would become the third largest economy. But let me remind you that we are the third largest economy that in its ruling party manifesto says we will continue to feed more than 50% of our country food grains for the next 5 years. That is the promise that we have. What is a country which is the third largest economy, which has inequality writ large over it? Look at our cities, how unequal they are. Can we have a conversation on the economy without realizing that this is an unfair economy? This is an economy that is built against the values of the poor, that only favors crony capitalists, that only favors the idea of some gaining at the hands of a few. As some gaining at the hands of the large masses. That is exactly what we're looking at. And therefore, I don't see consistency or continuity in this except for certain promises. Instead, I see consistency and only in parading lies, in parading parading falsehood of exactly where we should be going forward. And I know some people like Surabhi looks disappointed at this point, but I think the point is that it's a continuity in terms of failure, of showing that we can perform and we can show something.
I don't look disappointed. I just didn't want to get into political back and forth. But since you opened that, that's going to happen.
Aman, that was a typical opposition comeback, I would say, but a lot of insights again with regards to the important factions of the society that you're stressed upon. Well, we'll get on to that later. Now, I would hand it over to Professor Ravindra Reshme. Guys, I want your special attention on Sir's credentials, because I personally have been very inspired by the man. He has been a freelance journalist for a very long time and has worked across publications like Lankesh Patrika and Vikranta Karnataka, has worked with Gauri Lankesh and P. Lankesh themselves. And he was responsible for, you could say, downfall of two governments in Karnataka, one being the Ramakrishna Hegde government and, of course, the Bangarappa government. He has exposed the Arak cotton scandal and the scandal that occurred during the time of the Bangarappa government. Well, that, as simple as that, can talk about how amazing are his investigative journalist skills and how what is the kind of perspective he has towards the policies, the governance / the manifesto. Sir, I would hand it over to you. Please start. Sir, it's muted. If you could please unmute your mic. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Saqlain. I'm indeed flattered and honored by your words of introduction. I'm glad to interact with a huge gathering of youngsters, perhaps mostly. And your platform itself describes itself as politics for change. Yes, election after election, every 5 years, people have been voting for change. Change means what? Is it merely change of leadership, change of party, or change of government? No. Underneath their desire for change, there is an urge for generational change in politics and public affairs of Karnataka or India. So generational change means it's not compulsory retirement of the senior leaders who are running the country till now and putting in their place young, inexperienced, people in their place. No, it is not substitution of the senior leaders of different dispensation and then replacing them with youngsters. No. For me, generational change means a different kind of idea, approach, and style of functioning. People are desiring that. See, in the last 77 years after independence, from Nehru to Narendra Modi, we have seen different political experiments, different kinds of administrative reforms and social reforms, which have brought us today to a position of enviable position of fifth largest economy in the world. And this I attribute to three important speeches. The first one was on 14th August 1947, when the first Prime Minister of this country was yet to be sworn in, when Jawaharlal Nehru delivered his legendary speech at midnight hour. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India awakes to life and freedom. And Nehru turned out to be the builder of modern India. He was the right man at the right place at the right time. So that was 17 years of Nehruvian era. And after that, the second defining moment in Indian history is, you'll be surprised when I mention it, it was 24th July 1991, when Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister, and a non-politician, an economist by his background, Dr. Manmohan Singh he presented his first budget, which heralded a new era in independent India's history. Dr. Manmohan Singh, after presenting his first budget, which elaborated his proposed new economic policy, in which there were three components: privatization, liberalization, and globalization. After reading out the text of the budget speech, he made the only extempore speech, perhaps, which was quite significant and prophetic too. What Dr. Manmohan Singh said was, I wish to submit before the honorable members of this august house that time for a great idea has come, and no power on the earth will be able to stop the flow of this idea. The idea is India will emerge as the most powerful economic power and knowledge power in the next 2 decades. And how prophetic and true, honest was Dr. Manmohan Singh. When he presented his first budget, the total population of educated middle class was around 18 crores. And in 2014, when he had to step down as Prime Minister of this country, the population of educated middle classes was around 36 crores. That means the population of educated middle class had doubled during those monumental decades. And 36, what does it mean? The significance of this number, 36 crore educated middle classes, means larger than the total population of United States of America, whom we consider as the superpower. And now the number must have crossed 40 crores even. It must be around 44 to 45 crores. And that was the change which Dr. Manmohan Singh brought about. And we describe it as knowledge-based economy, knowledge power, knowledge-based economy. And that is what is responsible. That's how it was Dr. Manmohan Singh and P.V. Narasimha Rao laid the foundation for a generational change in politics and public affairs of independent India. And if today Modi proudly claims that India has become the fifth largest economy, overtaking its former colonial master, United Kingdom, that is because of what Manmohan Singh and P.V. Narasimha Rao did in 1991. Then after that, 2015, on 15th August, 2014, 15th August, from the ramparts of Red Fort, when Prime Minister Modi delivered his first Independence Day speech as Prime Minister, I was shocked and surprised when he uttered, quoting words of Vivekananda, saying that toilets are more important than temple. Devalaya is more important than Shauchalaya. Shauchalaya is more important than Devalaya. And such words coming from a Prime Minister whose parent party, for whose parent party, construction of Ram Mandir was a single point agenda. And he followed it up by launching the Swachh Bharat program, when, again, even the date was quite significant. On October 2nd of the same year, he launched his Swachh Bharat program and went on to build 11 crore toilets for all rural and urban households as his most ambitious development program. And that was a paradigm shift which was brought about by Narendra Modi. And for me, Jawaharlal Nehru, Manmohan Singh, and Narendra Modi, they represent three important milestones in the political history of independent India. Coming to Narendra Modi, and why I consider Manmohan Singh and Narendra Modi equally important is both of them are disruptors and both of them are game changers. They don't mind shedding the ideological baggage of their respective parties. That's what Dr. Manmohan Singh did. Till 1991, it was Nehruvian socialism that prevailed. It was fashion for all the self-proclaimed progressives and leftists to say that ours is a socialist democracy. And without any hesitation, Dr. Manmohan Singh, he disrupted that system and replaced it with his own model of privatization, liberalization, and globalization. And it was not just a political change. It was not a political revolution. This revolution was, was made inevitable because of the monumental changes that took place in the 1980s decade. The significant changes, the technological, development that took place in the information technology and communication technology sector. Once the internet came in, it was inevitable that most of the countries, irrespective of their ideological baggages, had to accept globalization. So globalization has come to stay, although now many countries are having second thoughts about continuing with globalized model of development and economics. It has come to stay. And what was the most important change that Dr. Manmohan Singh's economic policy ushered in? That was the so-called corporate companies, which were earlier owned by families and dynasties. They came to acquire, social leadership. Today we have managerial leadership in most of the famous corporate companies. And the new generation corporate companies like Infosys, they ushered in a new model of ethics, corporate ethics, consisting of three components, that is transparency, accountability, and corporate social responsibility. And the political parties, which were hitherto led by social leadership based on their competence, commitment, and performance, they came under dynastic ownership. Today, most of the secular parties are controlled by one or the other dynastic family. And this is where Modi disrupted the system. Unmindful of what his words would have an impact on his own party colleagues, he made a public declaration against Jatiwad, Parivarwad, and Bhrashtachar. He continues to harp on the team. And what about the disruptions that he brought about in the system? The first thing was he replaced Planning Commission with Niti Aayog. And then he changed the date of presentation of budget. Instead of 28th or 29th February, budget presentation happened on February 1st. And most importantly, according to him, in the previous 10 years, what he has done was the most important and bold decisions that he took were four. The first one was demonetization of high value currencies on November 8th, 2016. Number two, implementation of GST in July 2017. And then the farmers policy, the amendment to the Farmers Act. He tried to introduce a new policy for farmer, for the agriculture sector, which turned out to be a failure. Of course, it was a significant failure, a very unfortunate failure, because farm sector was the only area which was left out from the benefits of globalization. Investment in technology had not reached agriculture sector. Modi tried to attempt that. He tried to reverse that, but unfortunately, due to the persistent agitation in the borders of Punjab and Uttar Pradesh, he had to give in to public opinion.
Sir,
Then after that, the new education policy in 2020 was also a significant decision of Narendra Modi. I could have gone on this,
yes,
but then I think I've almost completed
yes,
the time available for introduction of my views. Let us carry forward during the question answer session. So according to me, Narendra Modi marks the third important landmark in the political history of independent India.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. That was a very interesting, taken aback to the times of Dr. Manmohan Singh and how things have evolved from then. Surabhi has to leave by 5:15, so we'll quickly jump into the Q&A session. We open questions now. Primarily, let's target it towards Surabhi because she has some time constraints. So let's see what do we have. Yes, we are open for the first question, please.
I would like Hello, ma'am.
Yes, Dishant, could you be a bit loud, please?
Yes, yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Ma'am, I would like to ask that you talked about women empowerment, but what about that women safety? Because since when BJP has been in power, the country has witnessed a further violence against women. The 2021 data of NCRP reveals that average 86 women were raped every day in India, and the overall crime against women per 100,000 of the population has increased from 56.3 in 2014 to 66.4 in 2022. And ma'am, I would also like to ask about the Nirbhaya Fund, which has been established in 2013 after public outrage over the Delhi gang rape case, is grossly underfunded and underutilized. In 2021, only 50% of the money allocated had been released, and only 29% has been actually spent.
I got your point. Thank you. Thank you, Nishant. Not meaning to cut you off, but I do have to answer your question as well. I got the numbers. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that let me also just, if it's okay, give some remarks and then get to the questions. I hope that's all right. I'm glad that I'm speaking from Karnataka, and I'm glad that my colleague from the Congress spoke about the way the manifesto has been structured around the guarantees. There is no hesitation in accepting that the guarantee, the term, was first popularized here in Karnataka. Now, what is it that we were thinking when we picked it up? We picked it up because there was this need to differentiate what the Congress gets to deliver and what the BJP delivers. Ideas are free and fair. We've all had great ideas. Many of us have similar ideas on policy and whatnot. But who gets to execute it, as rightly said by my Congress colleague, is incredibly important. The government that is chosen has that responsibility, and Narendra Modi's track record is the reason why he gets chosen again and again to implement ideas. And the important part of that guarantee, the distinction, Rajiv Gandhi used to say that, when 1 rupee is spent, a mere 14 rupees ends up in the pocket of the beneficiaries. The distinction that the Modi government emphasizes on is that proper delivery, efficient delivery of services, of benefits is possible through digitization. Digitization that, by the way, started in the Congress era when Nandan brought about Aadhaar, but was swiftly picked up by the Prime Minister's government. And Nandan Nilekani himself speaks about this, that the push that the Prime Minister was able to give for digitization in the country, for digital public infrastructure and goods, has been a game changer. I disagree with this. We would have reached the 5th largest economy, irrespective of the 3rd largest economy or the 5th largest economy, irrespective of who's in power. Let me tell you a little bit about Karnataka. We were a revenue surplus state just before the Congress came into power. Sure, the guarantees are accepted by a significant portion of our women, especially. However, the cost that it is bearing is huge. And that's what I see as lacking in the Congress's vision. Opposition parties get to promise the moon and back without any feasibility. That's what the Nyaya Patra is all about. I'm sure you'll talk about it when it comes to that. Here in Karnataka, there is a price hike every other day because of the lack of funding that they're able to do for the guarantees. The money that has been earmarked for Bengaluru, the reason we see potholes, the money that has been earmarked for Bengaluru has not gotten through because of significant fiscal mismanagement in terms of scams and elsewhere. I have this interesting thing, and I'll end on that. I won't go too much into politics. There is always a higher expectation, they say, that people have of the BJP. When Congress is involved in corruption, they're like, Congress to aise hi hai. This is how the Congress is. But we always have a higher level at which we, are looked at. Newer party, lesser history, lesser, and not dynastic in nature. So therefore, all those sort of expectations are definitely higher. But I just, I would like for my Congress friend to not look at policy making from a very unilateral party sense, because all parties tend to get right or wrong. The distinction is, of course, in the execution and implementation, and getting a third term, I think, is a signal that we're getting it right somewhere. Beyond the NPA crises that we were handed over, beyond the policy paralysis that we were handed over. I'll come to the question now. And Ravindra Reshme, sir, thank you so much for that lesson in history. I've gone head on head with him multiple times on television about, Manmohan Singh's role. One of the books that Shankar Iyer writes about Accidental India, on how all of the decisions that were pivotal in India's history were done because of absolute necessity. One of the things that I think distinguishes the Modi era from the era of Manmohan Singh, from the era of P.V. Narasimha Rao, and of course, Nehru is a long way back, is that there is intent. The fact that we are going from globalization to a multipolar world, our foreign policy has distinctly changed. And while this might be played down, what is uniquely Indian stands out. The fact that we can call something a Yuga Day, the fact that we can have a unique perspective for the Russia-Ukraine war. These are aspects that in the very crux of it matter. So I just wanted to mention that to me there is a very deep-rooted sense of Indianness to the BJP's policy, and we are open to debate on what that Indianness is. Your question on the underutilization of funds and the rise in crimes against women. And thank you for bringing that up. The RG card case that we saw in Bengal, of course, has shattered all of us again and again. I was in Delhi when Nirbhaya happened, and it was, as a woman, it's something that you have to constantly contend with. Women empowerment to women-led development, I'd like for you to just think of that as an important shift in mindset. For me, that makes a lot of difference. Whether that has led to stronger women's safety laws. Now, law and order is a state subject, so therefore there is differences across states. Many of the figures that you mentioned here in Karnataka, there's been a staggering in Bengaluru, 30% rise in crimes against women, especially for cyber crime. I do not want to say that, look, we've done enough. Clearly, we've not. I think I would recommend, and I want to put this on record, that I've been telling my party's representatives who are in policy making that the behavioral shift that we need to ensure. Laws, yes, those are punitive measures, but also the behavioral shift towards women can only happen if more women come up and speak about it and ensure what we're seeing in society is stopped. What does it take for a woman to go and report in a police station? Is women police stations enough? Is a woman constable being around enough? There needs to be more women in leadership position to ensure women's safety, because it's a very, very difficult issue to govern. It is a state subject to a great extent, law and order. Yes, funds can come from the center, but how it is utilized depends a lot on local authorities. And more than anything else, beyond the politics, it comes to societal, familial mindsets. And also the onus significantly is on men. I think how we raise our men, how we raise our children, same with how we raise our women as well. So these are the few things in terms of policy. Have we done enough for safety? I do think that there have been, with women police stations, with easier access to registering cases, with the amount of I'll be very honest, right? I don't think that's the problem. I do think that the problem lies in the bottom layer, whichever party, whichever government, that we need to do better, and the societal layer of the problem. I'm forgetting. So you asked me Nirbhaya, you asked me on safety. Yes, so these two questions were there. Sorry, I will rush through. I don't want to leave without having answered everything.
Yes. So we have one more question from Parimal. He says, Ladli Behan Yojana and other fiscal schemes that are out there. He asks, doesn't it go against the core promise of fiscal prudence, since the state of Maharashtra has the debt over there has increased significantly? So how would BJP balance it out is his question.
Yeah, we've been very vocal about, welfareism, like I said, and the reason I mentioned that, policy shifts towards the left. I say this not from, sure, it might be an easy way for us to categorize, but hey, let's have an Indian version of it. Your right in the US is super capitalist, whereas your right in India is sort of centrist in terms of economy. Nobody can be super capitalist in India. As much as we do Adani bashing, Adani is in Telangana where there's a Congress government, Adani is elsewhere. And the same, whoever says that BJP doesn't do welfareism, Modi is one of the most welfarist persons there is. He's come from the very bottom, so he understands that state support for certain sections of society is incredibly important and should not be taken away, because we need to have an equal society. Having said that, competitive competitive freebies or competitive welfareism? I think that's a political question more than it is a policy question. Is it the right answer? I don't know. I do not, as a BJP person, I do not, or anybody, I'm as a policy person, I do not feel that populist policies of the left in terms of, welfareism is going to lead us to a good place. Political pressures sometimes are are what they are. But if I could say something about Ladli Behna, it has been, and this is true for other schemes also. Here we've had the Bhagya Lakshmi scheme. What is it that the guarantees did in Karnataka, right? It was a rebranding. The same accusation that the Congress puts on us into so many ways is rebranding. Let's be honest that sometimes that works, especially in politics. That's what works, right? But our layer, which I mentioned before, what is it that differentiates the BJP's welfare approach? When you give us Suryaghar Bijli Yojana, you say that I'll give you X amount of units free, but you have to install solar panels. There is some incentive there also for long-term capital gains. For us, implementation and ensuring in the long term that also leads people to get out of cycle of poverty, get out of the cycle of being unsustainable. That is also incredibly important. So I wanted to, so that's my answer to your question. I'm happy to go back and forth. I think we have another 10 minutes. I'd love for the other panelists also to jump in. I don't want to hog the stage. Yeah.
All right. Parimal, I think you got your answer there. Can we have the next question, probably for Amaan?
Okay, while we wait for that, sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, is it open to ask a question?
Yes,
Can
yes,
I?
please, Shashank, please go ahead.
Yeah, as this manifesto comes as now as Modi government or after 2014, everyone is going through manifesto and everyone is aware about there is a manifesto and it's all going. But what I'm asking to every political party, that what if they fail to deliver as they said in manifesto? As in first term, they like every policy can't be successful. They may fail. So how does they will bring up in the upcoming or next term? That is my question. Like no one talks about the policy failure. Everyone talks about the policy which is successful.
I think
Because some
it is a very common man's question, Shashank, that
No, it's a
what
good
if
question.
what
Yeah.
if the political parties fail to deliver? Yes, I would.
yes.
Yeah.
No, because I have an example. Like we have this present government has failed to bring up that manufacturing industry growth to some extent. So what they have planned for, what they have a plan, because once they have failed, there should be a plan B, according to me.
Yeah. So can I just come in on this and
Yes,
then
please. Yes, please.
so that we can probably follow up. So I was just thinking about, I'm going to answer this first at a more larger level, meta level at what we're discussing of failures itself. I think we don't have enough conversations about policy and policy failures and having a performance review of governments, because I think when it comes to election time, it's either going to be talking about issues that divide us than things that actually bring us together. And that I'm saying that without any qualification of any party's way of going about elections. I'm saying this is how everybody wants to go about it, is to think about it in terms of politics, not in terms of, can you judge us as to whether we've actually led this initiative well? And I think the prime, as a congressman, I have no qualms in admitting that the 2014 election was the lack of the Congress party's marketing of its success on the policy front. We were able to bring the country out despite 2008 financial crisis that shook the world. India still emerged very strongly out of it. And the rights-based legislation that other people in this conversation have spoken about, we gave the right to food, we gave the right to education, we gave the right to information. All of these things were key hallmarks of what the Congress government has brought forward, but it's just the lack of putting policy into politics. So I think it's a very important thing about how do you sell policy as a politician. That's what we kind of fail, and we are not able to. And you'd rather have people discuss these things, but we're instead dragged into the petty politics of things, I think. So I think it's very important for us to have conversations about policy, have conversations about where we stand and whether they can be corrective measures. And I'll just come to the manufacturing thing as an example. I think the PLI scheme largely has failed. Make in India, again, like Surabhi was claiming, the Congress comes up with lofty promises because they have the idealism of being outside of government. But if you look at it, one thing that's missing in this manifesto is make in India as a word. smart cities as a word. These were all amazing words that I was sold on. I was saying that, wow, we want 100 smart cities. And I thought, and I was going through the manifesto and I did a word search to see the word smart cities. It has disappeared. There's no word called smart cities anymore. It is called 100 sustainable cities. And that's the same promise that is in 2014. But we're not talking about why have smart cities failed. It's not just about the branding, packaging, marketing that has failed, but it's about how do you still convince people that, okay, our plan for cities and selecting cities has failed. We have not been able to ensure that there's actually been smart cities that's been created. And how do we now move forward from here? And let's have this conversation openly. Instead, you have a prime minister who refuses to accept he's in a coalition. You have a government who refuses to accept into a conversation that things have to change. Which is why I also believe that I'm a strong proponent of a coalition government that comes into power that actually has conversation with people, where you sit up and you say that no, we have to like negotiate and have a conversation with people before our policies come out. And instead of somebody who comes out at one point in the night and says that your notes are no longer valid, or comes up and says it's going to be a lockdown for 70 days, the longest lockdown in the world that's going to happen overnight. Instead of brash decision making, you need collective decision making, both in the public space and within the government itself. That is what we are lacking, I think, and that's where failures are not recognized. If you believe that the person who's leading you is somebody who's supernatural, then it's very hard for you to question him. So I feel that is exactly the problem we have, and it's become even further emancipated under the BJP.
Thank you, Aman. Surabhi, would you like to follow up on that? Because we have one more question. Girish is waiting.
I've grown up in the coalition era of the UPA. So when somebody mentions coalition politics and the pressures that come with it and how that becomes a lot more democratic, I'm reminded of, the Radia tapes and the scams and everybody. It's a bit much to go back in that. I agree that there should be diverse perspectives. And I think the onus of that should be on the opposition. The opposition needs to be as effective in communicating and taking its supporters along to hold the government accountable. That's where we should have, and where I see that lacking, I take the point on consensus. I think Niti Aayog as an organization has attempted to do this, and of course, this GST Council exists specific issues, but more state and center coordination would be required for us to solve some of these problems. The problems that I see that get solved within the Modi government, and I'm saying this as an observer, is the ones that require change in law, the ones that require center to be backing it with full capacity. Where we're falling short, as rightly mentioned, our cities today are a mess. I come from Bangalore. I don't have, I don't go back on that at all. 25% of Karnataka's population is dependent on Bangalore. A significant portion of our funding comes from Bangalore. Our city is a mess today, and we have, things like brand Bangalore, which doesn't make any sense, because where is the brand Bangalore if you're not building for Bangalore to be a livable city? Yes, the smart cities have not delivered. Let us acknowledge that. I have no qualms in that. I think where this policy correction, and that's where the question sort of comes in, where does policy correction happen is also at the bureaucratic level, because it's been said, to a great extent, the policy selling is what politics becomes about, but the policy correction and that impacting politics happens at the bureaucratic level, happens as conversations between local authorities, state government, national government. We need to do better from our public administration and process perspective for that to happen. And this is a controversial opinion. Please don't attribute it to my party. But we need more talented people in government, and we need more capable people in government. And sometimes we also need people who probably do not go through the UPSC route. So that's something that our government has been trying to push for. I'm a policy professional. I remember I spent 2 years at Harvard, and one class that I took at Harvard Business School, Harvard Business School has a case study based methodology, which is you have a case and you have all the things that have gone wrong in a particular company, and then discussion on how to fix it. I always wondered, why didn't we need to have these cases in India? It's a personal project that I'm working on to document policy failures, successes, to learn from them so that we can do better. There is never, politics and perfection or policy and perfection cannot exist. I'll hand over to Ravindra Reshme, sir.
Yes, sir wants to speak. Yes. If you could please unmute yourself. Sir, if you could please unmute yourself.
Okay. I have two observations regarding both the principal political opponents of India. See, the idea of India, which Mr. Rahul Gandhi keeps harping upon, it does not include dynastic politics. Dynasty is not the idea of India, because the scions of dynasty, they don't have to face the challenge of competition, merit, performance, or selection. Automatically, they are thrust into positions of power. A son or daughter of the Gandhi family directly become general secretary of the party, member of the Congress working committee, and later they are put in charge of different states on an experimental basis. And it's not so in either in communist parties or in Bharatiya Janata Party. Narendra Modi may be a leader of most powerful leader of Bharatiya Janata Party, but he's not the proprietor of Bharatiya Janata Party. And there are so many eminent leaders in communist parties. None of them have a permanent ownership of the party. And coming to BJP, I don't know why the BJP spokespersons are hesitant to project Modi as the first ever OBC prime minister of this country. The most important contribution of Modi is restoration of the role and authority of the post of Prime Minister and Council of Ministers, which was missing during the 10 years of UPA regime. That's what Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad, when he exited Congress party, he wrote the epitaph on the collapse of intel democracy in Congress party. He said the role and authority of the constitutional posts of Prime Minister and Council of Ministers was undermined. And they created an extra constitutional authority called UPA
NSE.
Advisory Council, which consisted of Mrs.
NSE.
Sonia Gandhi as a chairperson and a few and hand-picked friend circle of the family. And that's what. And most of the good things that Manmohan Singh's government did, they were all, the credit was all given to Sonia Gandhi's UPA Advisory Council. And even today, none of the congressmen are proud to recall the names of their own prime ministers. For them, P.V. Narasimha Rao, they don't even remember him at all. It's a sin to recall Narasimha Rao's contribution. And they treat Manmohan Singh as accidental prime minister. And it's not a joke also. Even today, are there any Zindabad for Mallikarjun Kharge? No, Zindabad's are reserved only for Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, and Priyanka Gandhi of late. That means the idea of India is not dynasty which is rooted in the worst form of nepotism, worse than caste system. Because caste system itself is a very, very ridiculous type of nepotism. But within the caste, there's a large assemblage of very talented people. At least some of them can hope to get a position in keeping with their talent and achievement in their eligibility. But a dynasty is a closed community. It's a gated community. No one else except the members of a particular family will have the command over the party affairs, whether they are holding an official position or not. Rahul Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi need not become general secretary or president. Irrespective of who is the AICC president, the proprietorship vests with the family. And unfortunately, most of these self-proclaimed secular parties are under the proprietorship of particular families. So dynasty is neither secularism nor democracy. And regarding BJP, I don't know why that even this era of when the opposition parties are crying hoarse over caste censors, this social justice politics, this, that, why don't you say emergence of Modi as prime minister and Modi being in #1 position continuously for 23 years? It's a record of sort, and you are not proud of it. He's the first ever OBC prime minister of this country. Until October 4th, 2001, he was a nobody. And most of his cabinet colleagues in Gujarat government and later in union government, they were all far more senior to him in electoral politics. He had not even contested a Gram Panchayat election till October 4, 2001. And then he did not inherit an upper caste, upper middle class or dynastic background. And such a person, if he continues in power in #1 position for 23 uninterrupted years, that's a triumph of Indian democracy. And BJP are hesitant to say, because that RSS. And now, after 2024 Lok Sabha election, I think Mr. Modi finds himself in the crossfire between RSS and BJP. And you can just, I can make out
observation on that. I would want, Amaan to quickly tell us about the dynasty politics point that sir raised. I think that was a really interesting one.
So I think, Saqlain, I respect Sir a lot, and I respect all of the political acumen and all the immense contribution he's made to journalism, 101%. But I think when it comes to dynastic politics, I think it's very easy to blame the Congress Party as being the haven of where dynasty ends and starts with. But I think it's a malady, it's a disease that pervades all parties. I think look at the BJP in Karnataka today. You have Vijayendra, whose only virtue is of being Yadurappa's son, and therefore gets his way through. Look at the bypolls that are happening. You have Basuraj Bommai's son running for election just simply because of the virtue that he's Basuraj Bommai's son. You have multiple such cases left, right, and center of them just being with dynasts and being very happy to accommodate dynasts within the party at the national level as well. It's the BJP's clean washing machine, which takes a dynast from Scindia and takes him through the washing machine, and then he becomes this paragon of virtue that it comes out and saying that he's not no longer a dynast. You look at the way in which dynastic politics they've left politics and they've moved on to moving the dynasty to other parts of the economy. You have dynasties controlling cricket across the world now, not on basis of merit. A person who has not seen probably the beginnings of cricket has now become the head of the cricket across the world because of his virtue of being the part of the home minister's family. So I think dynasty pervades everybody. There's no doubt about it. But I think what speaks to this and what speaks to Congress's commitment to this is I give you two cases. First is that the election of the Congress president was a free and fair election. Khargeji won this election without we at least Surabhi is smiling at this, but I think the fact is that we at least had an open election. JP Nadda has been the BJP's president, and his term has been extended over and over again without opening up nominations. I wonder why. I wonder why we can't have an open conversation in the BJP for who will become the president. Whereas in the Congress, we had a challenger who, yes, was an urban middle class fantasy in the name of Shashi Tharoor, but yes, he provided a fight. He provided a manifesto in comparison to what Khargeji had. There was a campaign, and people from that section of the party have not been sidelined in any way. Instead, Tharoorji got even more elevated in the party post his run as president against Khargeji. And Khargeji, for the past 2 years, has been the president of the Congress party, and as a congressman, and as somebody who has seen the success in person of Khargeji, I think we are able to speak about how it has been great to understand what a nice person he's been in terms of being credible and effective. And if people are continuing to vote in people like Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi, it speaks to the value of what the Gandhis have for the country and what value people hold for them. And I think there's no way to go about it, but people are selecting them and people in the party believe in them.
Yes,
May I
Surabhi,
just give my final comments, and I'm
Yes,
sorry I have to leave. Thank you, Aman. Thank you, Ravindra sir, and all the participants today. I'm glad we're ending on dynasty politics. It's a pet subject of mine because I don't come from a political family. I actually was working in the Youth Congress way before I joined the RSS BJP, and I remember how these elections are run. The amount of money that's spilled, the amount of different political families that do present themselves a lot more democratic these days. And the primary elections that happened in the Congress also failed significantly because of exactly this reason. Happy to go into a debate on that. I think the dynasty malady that we speak about, the nepotism malady, as Sir very rightly pointed out, the difference for me and the reason why I joined the BJP and the RSS system, the difference for me is it's not about, oh, my son has to become something or not. It's about resource consolidation. It's about where are the resources finally going? Who is benefiting from it? The problem with the Congress party is that it's so centered around the family that all the resources finally end up there. It doesn't matter if they are the Congress president or not. Finally, that's where all the resources come from. The second thing, today we are going to see if Priyanka Gandhi wins the election, we'll be seeing 3 people from the, Gandhi family as members of parliament through different Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. This is not something that, at that level, does not happen in the BJP. Whether the difference again is that today I can say with significant amount of confidence that if I wanted to ever be in the race and be at the helm of my party, not just as a face or a placeholder, but actually be at the helm of party politics, I could. I don't think everybody in the Congress gets to say that. I really don't. And beyond that, dynasty politics for people who don't come from political backgrounds is a very tough thing to deal with. And for a woman, it's even more tough to deal with. So let's hope that we get away from that. I think what Ravindra sir mentioned was as a positive example, somebody who's gone from where they were to where they are right now. To me, that is something. To me, that shows that people like us can also make it. I mean, I don't know whether you come from a political family or not, but
Can I comment on this?
I don't know if you come in from a political family or not, but if you don't, I think you would understand my place where I'm coming
No,
from.
absolutely. Yeah. And sorry, I'm cutting you off there, but I'll just answer that. No, I don't come from a political family. I have been through political parties. I was part of the Aam Aadmi Party, and now I'm part of the Congress Party for the past 3, 4 years. But I think it's very hard. And I think for you as a woman and for me as a Muslim, it's very hard for us with our limited options that we have for parties that are actually in the space to allow professionals in politics. And I feel whether it's the Congress or the BJP, we should move towards professionalism in politics. By that, I don't mean consultants managing our elections necessarily, but for us to at least have people like us who understand policy to actually be in charge. Certainly, even I will have to drop off. I
You
think
are
on that
very
positive
welcome
note,
to join the BJP. We are always open to having difference of
I
opinion.
think
And
Surabhi, we're
more
welcome to
professional.
when the tide is as the tide is changing nationally and in the state, we're welcome to open the doors of the Congress for you to come back to your natural home.
The
On that
landmark
positive note, I
movement.
think we should.
No,
Landmark
as long
movement
as
in our
the Gandhi family is around, I'm not coming to the Congress. So if you can vouch to have them away, Ravindra sir, sorry, go ahead. I don't want to leave when you're. Please, sir.
Sir, if you could unmute yourself, please. Sir, please unmute yourself. No, sir, it didn't work. Could you please do it again? Yeah.
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 Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
The latest example, I was telling you the paradox of globalization was the corporate companies which earlier had family proprietorship, they have come to be owned by managerial leadership. For Tata Sons, it is not a Tata who is the owner of, who is the CEO of Tata Sons. It is Chandrasekharan from Tamil Nadu. And most of the companies have now come to accept the idea of managerial leadership. Infosys is not the ownership, the proprietorial company of Narayan Murthy and his family. No, so many CEOs have changed with the passing of time. While corporate world has accepted social leadership, managerial leadership, political parties have come under the permanent proprietorship of particular families, from the Abdullahs, Muftis, the Lalu Prasad Yadavs, from Sharad Pawar's, Karunanidhi, Devegowda, everyone. And most of this, and it's an irony that most of the so-called secular parties have come to have remained under family proprietorship. And nobody questions that. And why
So we
congressmen
question it every day in the BJP.
why congressmen are shy of invoking the names of Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh? And even when Punjab elections are held in Punjab, they don't mention the contribution of Dr. Manmohan Singh. When elections are held in Andhra Pradesh or Telangana, they're shy of mentioning Narasimha Rao's name. They were shocked when on the eve of just before a few months of elections in Telangana, and Modi announced Bharat Ratna for Narasimha Rao, congressmen were rudely woken up. They were shaken out of their slumber. They must have felt apologetic, but can't express it because nobody is superior to Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, Priyanka Gandhi. That's the paradox of Congress politics. And what about BJP? See, your Prime Minister rightly says, yes, sabka saath, sabka vikas. And soon after 2019 election, when he got a bigger majority, addressing the first parliamentary board meeting in Central Hall, he expressed his regret. Although we have our voters have blessed us with a bigger majority, I have a small regret. We are not able to win the hearts of Muslims of India. But there was no resonance within his party. He added a third slogan, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, in order to win over the Muslim population in this country. And as recently as 2022 National Convention in Hyderabad, he became the first minister who has spoken about, first prime minister who spoke about the plight of Pasmanda Muslims.
Sir, I would like
He
to.
openly said 85% of Indian Muslims are all Pasmanda Muslims, backward class and Dalit converts.
Yes.
And he gave a call to his partymen to reach out to them, Sneha Yatra. But there was no reciprocal response from his own party people, nor from the Muslim leadership in this country. So
Right.
both his own party as well as his rival parties, they're out of sync with Modi's ideas and actions. And Modi finds himself totally isolated in a coalition politics. And Congress tries to make a virtue out of necessity. So we have had 3 prime ministers with brutal majority, Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi. And suddenly, after post 89, it had to be coalition era. But don't make a virtue out of necessity. Modi has proved in 10 years, even a single party government can govern. And he faced the toughest challenge of all times, that was COVID pandemic. And no prime minister or president in any country for that matter had faced such a global challenge in the last 100 years. But the way he managed, he led from the front. He conducted 23 video conferences with all the chief ministers of the state, month after month, fortnight after fortnight. And even in those critical times, he did not yield to pressure of freebies. Nirmala Sitharaman announced 24 lakh crore packages only for those sectors where there is production and employment generation, and not distribution of freebies.
Sir, I would like to cut you off right there, because we are coming to the end of the time, and again, some fantastic points raised by Professor Ravindra Reshme. Well, we've had some questions that we could not address. I'm really sorry, Girish and Akshat. We will continue in the next session. Now we reached the end of this, and I think it was a fantastic session. We had a lot of insightful things that we learned about, a nice little banter, and of course, the conversations that we had over here, very, very wholesome and healthy, I would say. Again, I would like to thank Surabhi for joining us from the Bharatiya Janata Party, Amaan from the Congress Party, and of course, Professor Ravindra Reshme, providing a very holistic perspective of governance, academia, and a leadership out there. And of course, thanks to every single person who has taken part in this webinar. We love to host a lot more of them in the coming time on different aspects. And yes, today we end on this note that the manifestos are definitely important. Execution is more important. And of course, for us to be politically inclined and understood towards what is happening in the country is also a lot more importance. Thank you so much, all of you. We will see you again in the next webinar that we will host. And of course, we will share the invites with you. You have a great weekend. You have a great evening. Thank you so much. This is Saqlain.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Saqlain, for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.